I was a little bit young then, but I fired it between Amarillo and Clovis. And of course, you want me to explain these mechanisms here?
Yes, sir.
This is your throttle. Yeah, see, now that's what makes her go forward and backward and so on and so forth. All right. This is just one of your brake valves. Another one.
I believe you called that the junction
Yeah,
bar.
reverse. Yeah, the reverse lever. And of course, this is your brake valve that handles your train. This is the independent brake. It sets the brake just on the locomotive.
Okay.
And of course, well, you got a lot of things on there. Now here's a little valve here that was the sander valve. It put sander on the rails to keep the drivers from slipping, see?
Yeah.
And then forward, it'd be the forward sanders. Back, it'd be the backup sanders, see? And of course, you know, there's your speedometer up there. Tell how fast you're running. Now, you want me to explain a little bit on the fireman side?
Yeah.
Getting damn old, can't hardly get around. Now this is a firing valve here. That's what you feed. You feed the oil that burns in the boiler. And of course, this one that had got to do with shaking the grates. You know,
Explain
you get a certain
shaking.
amount of.
Explain shaking the grapes.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Oh, the grates. That's what the fire. Other words, your fire. They had when they converted this from coal over to oil burners. They laid blocks inside the boiler there, fire blocks.
Okay.
And the oil burner part of it heated them for that major steam. And of course, you worked with the engineer whenever he'd widen on the throttle, and why you'd gradually open and give it more fuel. You see.
All right.
And
So it actually took.
And if his show was shut down, you had to cut your fuel down. And in order, you know, if you didn't do it, you had to work together with the engineer on it.
Right. So that means at least two people were required to operate this.
Yeah. I never did run this engine, but I fired it a lot back in I guess it was after the war in the 50s. I worked for the old Rock Island for 40 years. I was an engineer over there on steam over there.
But we didn't have a chance for you to introduce yourself. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Chester Ross. I went to work for the Rock Island in 1940. And I worked with them off and on, and I got cut off to come over here on the Santa Fe, and should have stayed.
Yes,
It's
sir.
good railroad, you know, but I heard they were going to move this thing, and I just worried about it, because I'd like to see it stay right where it's at.
Yeah.
But that's progress, you know, I guess. But
Well, at least I understand it's going to be inside of a barn or some type of shed, so maybe it'll have a little bit more protection.
well, where are they moving it to? Do you know?
No?
Somebody said about 3
Not
blocks
exactly.
from here.
Right, not too far from here.
And well, I hope they don't tear it up or anything like that. But if they're going to go to the trouble to move it, why, they'll probably take care of it. You see, it's coupled to the tank back there, and they can take it and move the engine by itself and the tank by itself, and then when they get where they want it, they can couple it back up.
Yes.
So it's quite a procedure, you know.
Yeah. Now, have you lived in Amarillo most all your life, or?
Oh yeah. about 80 years. I'm 83.
And you first started working for the railroad?
Yeah, I was, I was 20 years old when I went to work for the Rock Island. I just got out of high school, but I've always been a railroad nut, I guess.
What was your first position with the Rock Island?
Sorry?
What was your first position with the Rock Island?
I was
First
fireman
job.
over there. I fired those steam locomotives we had over there, you know.
So by fireman,
Yeah,
explain
well,
that.
See now, you had a fireman. This was his business over here, and you had to work with the engineer. He widened on the throttle while you had to increase the amount of fuel that you put in there to keep the steam up on it.
Right.
Out of this
Does that
one, I
mean
think-
that you actually had to shovel coal out of the
No.
coal tender? To...
No, this was never a hand shovel locomotive. They had the automatic boiler. I mean, fuel system on it. It delivered this oil burning locomotive is what it was. You see. And
Yes.
You didn't have any coal on this engine. Now earlier engines they did. You had to shovel coal. I shoveled a lot of it over on the Rock Island. But
Right. Well, when you first started working with the Rock Island, they were all coal fired.
Yeah, they had all of them were putting their all coal mines, and then they converted them over into oil.
Right.
Crude oil is a very cheap grade of oil, but that's what they used to keep them hot, you know.
So when the locomotives were coal fired, did it take 3 people to run?
Well, yes, pretty near all the railroads, locomotives were coal fired, you see, and then they converted over into fuel and burned. It was a low grade of just cheap fuel, you might say,
Yeah.
but that's what they used in their locomotives, you know. But
I guess the advantage of going to the fuel oil would be a train could travel further.
well, what they did with the old ones that had the coal burning tanks on there, they just built fuel tanks and put them right in there where the old car was, you see. And
Yes.
This changeover, that didn't amount to anything but putting a bigger oil burning tank on there. Now this one was never a coal burning engine. It was always an oil burner.
Uh-huh.
And but it's a powerful thing. I fired it over to Clovis with an old fella named Gatton, Jim Gatton, and it's an exciting job. It was for me anyway, but I love to do it.
Yeah.
And when I heard they was going to move this or get rid of it, why, I thought, well, I better get my camera and go get some pictures.
Now there's quite a number of valves, levers, that type of thing on the engine. It looks quite complicated. How did you learn to work the system? How were you trained to do that?
You just learn what each one represents. This engine was an oil burner. It burned oil.
Yes.
Crude oil, you see. And here was what you regulated the flow of oil going into the boiler. And of course, you had these different valves here. This was your oil injector and your blowback. And then, of course, your blower. You turned the blower on whenever you opened the fire door, and the blower took all the fumes out the stack, you see.
Right.
But this was never a coal burning engine, and I think, now I may be wrong on that, but whenever I was fortunate enough to fire it, well, it was an oil burner. And that was back in the early 40s. And but I was born right here in Amarillo, over here on Lincoln Street. And my dad was an engineer on the Rock Island.
I see. Now, as far as learning how to do your job on
Well,
these things, was there an apprenticeship you had to go through? What kind of training?
You just got on there. They call them students, see, and you had to make so many student trips to learn how to operate the fuel going into your firebox. You see.
Yes.
Which you had what you call an atomizer in there that oil was boiling hot whenever it got ready to go do its job in the boiler.
Yes.
And then they call it an atomizer, and it would get that fuel in there in a real it wasn't runny or anything. It was foam, see, the fuel, and then of course it ignited right away. With a certain amount of it.
I see. Well, I saw a gauge of some type up in the center here.
All right.
Or some lights. There's a signal foam meter.
It was the water gauge. It told you had to watch that car all the time to keep a certain amount of water. It told you how much water you had in your boiler.
Yes.
You see, and these gauges were it told you the pressure that you had on that up there, and this was your steam pressure on the engine, and of course the engineer had one, and this over here was speedometer on the engine. That'd tell you how fast you was running.
All right.
Of course these valves had to do with all the flow. See what it says, oil injector. You had to regulate the oil injector to the amount of power that he needed, and this is just the blowback to blow that fuel back into the boiler, and this says tank heat. That oil in the tank had to be boiling hot,
Yes.
Yeah. And then of course this one here was. That had to do with your oil flow going into the boiler. This one was actually the damper that you used a certain amount of air on that thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now this box up here with the lights on it. You were talking earlier about
that's
the fuel
signal.
foaming.
No, it's signal, block signals. That was put on there after they got into block signals. See, now, whenever you would, that says your foam meter. That had to do with your boiler, whether it was making steam correctly.
Okay.
You could tell by that. Of course, this is your firebox down there, and then if it's not. This thing here would open your, that'd open your grates. Now this, I doubt if I can get it open. No.
May need a little oiling.
Let me see if I can.
I don't think we can get it. It's heavy on this hump. Yeah, you got it. Yeah. Alright. Now that shows you inside of your boiler in there. You see, you notice the bricks look like bricks lined around in there. That was to keep the thing hot, you see. But the bricks were all the way around the inside of it.
Yes.
I think at one time it was a coal burner, but I'm not really sure.
Right.
When I fired it was oil.
Okay.
Yeah. But, well, that's
And also with us today, would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
I'm Gil from Flowers. I'm just here as a spectator trying to help if I know what to do.
All right. And where are you originally from? And
Tulia, but I live in Happy now.
Were you a railroad man?
No,
Oh, you weren't.
I was just a sod buster all of my life.
Oh, nothing wrong with that.
do you have any questions? Anything you're curious about you would like to have
He's
explained?
answered all of mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad we have somebody that knows something.
Well, I don't know much, but I hate to see them go. We're seeing, you know, a railroad's not a railroad without a steam engine. Of course, they get modern and everything else. What?
A geared wrench or something like that. We
You
might
know,
be able
all
to-
them old machinists are gone. I know them all, but hell, I'm lucky to be around. I'm
all dead, huh?
83.
Antique store.
I was wondering if there was any machinists still around.
Museum.
I doubt if there was. You know, they've done hard work all their lives.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things there.
This was one time,
Units up there in Chris.
looking at it, it was a coal burner locomotive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Neck converted over.
Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna have to find something that's got a big socket or something in there because this thing here,
There's quite a few that do.
this is in your way, and this and
Well,
these things
yeah.
these things are in the way of the wrenches. This big metal here,
Yeah.
so it's very limited what you can put in there to.
Most all them old guys are dead.
Yeah.
I was trying to think if I knew any of those machinists that are still alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there's bound to be, somebody around. Here in Amarillo, you know, they had a big roundhouse down there.
See, we know this method will work. It's just a matter of getting the right wrench to turn that.
I don't remember. It seemed to me like when they'd take it loose, everything that they had to move it up a little to get it fully disconnected. I
Yeah,
may be
that's what they
wrong.
told me. That's what they told me. But first we got to get that compressed, and then we're going to have a big wrecker jiggle
Yeah.
this tender a little
Yeah.
bit.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, T. Miller wrecking is
That
going
old
to.
tank empty.
There's about that much oil in the dipstick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of oil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we disconnected oil lines and everything between the
Oh,
the
yeah,
engine
I
and
see
everything,
that.
and nothing came out.
Yeah, well,
It says big fittings right up there.
it bumped it whenever the unit.
It's
had
so
a
thick
bump
it
on
won't
there
hardly-
with it. I
won't
think
hardly
that-
flow,
I
you know.
think that right there was the original pump, fuel pump the oil. See, this was a coal burner locomotive at one time.
Right.
I guess you call them
Yeah.
counterweights on those wheels.
I'm glad to see they're not going to scrap it.
Oh no, we're not gonna let them do that. No, we're supposed to move it over there and then build a new building around it.
Oh, well, that's good. It needs to be in
Yeah.
tight. It's in pretty
Because
good
that way,
shape for
there's
being-
no way to keep it up outside.
No.
You know.
See, it's been out of time for not about 30 years, I think.
It's been here since 1957, right here.
57, that's
Yeah.
not wrong.
Almost 50 years.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's pretty good shape, I guess,
Oh, yeah.
considering.
it
But,
is. Yeah. But I was lucky enough to fire this engine.
well, you rack your brain and see if you can think of any of those guys that are still around.
I will.
Have them call
I'll,
us.
I'll check into it.
Yeah.
Most of the old machinists, you know, are dead and gone. I'm lucky to be alive, I guess.
Yeah.
You get talking about 80.
Did you know TK Sanderson?
The name sounds familiar.
He's still alive. He's 93.
Yeah.
He was down here last weekend.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
They'll have to disconnect that. I think. I don't know.
No, we're not going to.
No,
See the lubricator up here?
Yeah.
we're going to fill that and operate it by hand.
Yeah.
And let it pump all this crosshead. And there's a line here going into the piston. And there's lines going several places. The crosshead.
Yeah.
And some stuff back in there. Then there's another lubricator like this on the other side that will get it going.
Yeah.
And then all these orange tags, these are your grease deals, and we're going to be greasing all those
Yeah.
with a gun.
Yeah.
And those are the aluminide fittings. These are the kind of the big ones here. But some of them are little. See, here's a little one up here.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of a medium size one here. Here's a big one.
Oh yeah.
This one was welded on here and we couldn't get it off.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the largest one.
Yeah. How do you know whenever you've got enough grease in it?
Oh, it'll
start
squeeze
coming
it
out.
out a little.
Yeah, it'll start oozing out, you know.
It'll come out places like that. Then the main rod, the same thing. It'd be easing out. Same way with all the. It squeezed out. They cleaned it up real good when they put it over here, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, they kept the car pretty clean all the time.
Something been removed off of here?
Yeah, see, there was a button,
Yeah,
a grease button just like this on all of these. And we took them off and we're cleaning them up. And then we're having a piece machined like this and threaded on top so that we can get a modern size aluminide fitting in there. And we'll use that new machine gun to screw on there and hook the gun to. And then get it greased, and then we'll put the old fittings back on.
Yeah.
Golly Moses.
That'd help,
All
yeah.
of these has got to be greased.
Yeah.
Yeah. This what's called the main rod here.
Mm-hmm.
Whose job was it to keep this thing lubed up when it was running?
Everybody's around it, probably.
Well, the engineers and the firemen did it out on the road, you know. And then, of course, when it was in the shop, and they did their overhauls and more heavier maintenance in the roundhouse and in the engine facilities. But the crew had to lubricate it as they went, you know, made their water stops.
I didn't know if maybe that job belonged to a specific person, the fireman or the engineer, or
Well, usually the engineer did that, didn't he?
What?
The greasing and oil.
No,
fireman?
No, when they come in Amarillo, why they had a machine shop, and that's the machinist done all that work.
Yeah. Of course, an engine like this, it kind of lubricated.
They didn't do
It
it
had
out
these.
on the road.
It had these mechanical lubricators, and it kind of
that's
worked
right.
on its own.
Yeah.
But some of the older units, you know, you've seen
they-
pictures of the engineer had those big old long oil cans
Well, he go along.
back in the older days before this.
I've got one.
What about this?
Yeah.
Is the brake
I had one.
set on that thing now?
No.
Yeah, it's.
How you gonna
It's-
get them loose?
Well, it's got air, and they'll. I guess they'd either have to take it off or pump some air in there.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a job. I imagine it'd be better to disconnect it. But
That's the only one that I've seen that was kind of tight. This here's loose. This here's loose. This is your oil bunker hatch. Right there. And of course, this was filled with oil, and it's a real thick, black, almost like crude. type
nothing
stuff.
like the diesel fuel that
No.
we think of today.
And then there's a dipstick right here. And you can kind of see on the end of that dipstick how thick that stuff was.
Yeah, it's dripping.
Anyway, they could pull that out and gauge how much oil they had. And
So this opening here is where the fuel would be poured
filled it
into.
right here and here. And you can see there's some baffles in here. Kind of cut down on the sloshing around of the oil a little bit.
You know how many gallons of fuel this would hold?
7,101. There's another one just like that right there. And then this is the water tank back here. And of course there's a lot of dirt and scale in there, and it too has baffles to keep the water from sloshing so much. This would hold 25,000 gallons of water.
So roughly 3 times the amount of water for the amount of fuel that you would carry.
Yeah. They usually have to take water on about every 25 to 50 miles depending on the grades.
Wow.
This is just a Sandbox.
We talked a little bit about the Sandbox earlier.
How they sand it to flues.
Well, this was used for sanding flues.
Yeah. Let me show you that down here a little bit. Yeah, you're not ready. And he could probably tell you this better than I can, but
Okay, we were just looking at the Sandbox or the sand bin on the tender,
right up here.
and it was explained that it was used
Let
for
me
sanding
get
the
out of the way.
flues.
And here's more right
Yeah,
here.
that's, yeah. That's sanders.
And
Sometimes they'd, oh, they'd get to slipping around or something, and they had a scoop, and they'd go down and put it on the rail, you know. It was kind of an emergency deal.
well, and also they take a scoop of it once in a while. And,
Yeah.
And let it go through this hole.
Yeah. And that cleaned the
it-
flues. Yeah.
Suction would pull it in there, and it would clean the flues
Clean
out,
the
clean
flues,
the shit
yeah.
out of the flues. Because if you suit it up, it wouldn't steam as good. You know.
Yeah, that's
So they had to keep that clean once in a while. Just kind of a periodic thing.
well. I'm gonna have to get the ass home. I left my dog. Well, enjoyed it. I'll see you guys. I'll be back.
We enjoyed having you too.
Well, that's something it's really a credit to the city of Amarillo to have that. They probably don't think so, but
There's no telling how long it took the factory to build one of these, is it?
oh, I used to know all that, but I forgot it all.
I would figure probably
They had
because
to
they got all
like
the
building automobiles, you know, American Locomotive or